Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to 22 Panels and the Comic Strip Book Club, where today we are discussing Ernie Bushmiller and Nancy. We have our regulars, Bob Sikoryak, Karl, Cristian, Krumpholz, Sean Harklerode, and Jonathan Baylis, and also joining us this month, this quarter, whatever it is. Yeah, this time, Caitlin McGurk from Ohio State University's Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum and publisher of Kitchen Sink Comics, Denis Kitchen. Hello, all. Anybody
Hi.
have anything they want to plug really
Hello.
quick? But then let's get into Nancy.
I mean, I'll gladly kick us off with a Nancy related plug because
I figured you
here,
would.
here in Columbus, Ohio, at the Ohio State University Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum, thanks for nailing that very complicated name. We currently have the Nancy Show, Bushmiller and Beyond in our galleries. It's a two-gallery exhibit all about the strip we're going to be talking about today, and it's open until November 3rd. Our galleries are always free and open to the public every day but Monday. So come check it out.
So anybody going out for CXC, it will still be going then. I
Oh,
had
great.
CXC's dates in my head yesterday because I just requested the time off and they're not in my head right now. Caitlin, do you have them off the top of your head?
It is, I want to say September 26th to the 29th.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it's
That
last
sounds
weekend
right.
of September. Yeah. Yep, that's it.
Yeah. And it's got a fantastic lineup of people this time. But every year, fantastic lineup. But you're celebrating 10 years now, and Jeff and you and everybody pulled out all the stops. So
Exactly.
that's
Yeah, it should be a good
another
one.
whole episode.
True.
Yeah, I'd like to plug Nancy and Sluggo's Guide to Life, which is out from New York Review of Comics. Oh, how handy. Great. Wow.
We don't oh, Bob's got the originals. We don't do video for our podcast listeners, but if we did, you would have seen literally everybody but Caitlin put up their copies. I'm certain Caitlin's got hers around.
Wow.
It's in my office actually. I'm at home, but yeah.
I'll plug Ohio University also has a book along with theirs. Do you remember the title, or do I have to look that up too?
Yes, I can actually see it behind Sean. It's the Nancy Show.
Oh, look at that.
And that is celebrating the art of Ernie Bushmiller. It's sort of a companion catalog to the show. So it has, I want to say it has pretty much everything in it by Bushmiller that's in the exhibit, but then it also has a bunch of other stuff that we couldn't fit in and just some random things and some essays. I had the honor of writing the preface for it, and it's a really good little book.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go to Denis because Denis is the one that, I mean, in your preface, you talked about everybody thinking that you were crazy when you said, "Yeah, I just brought back Eisner and I just brought Al Cap. Let's do Nancy next." Why? What dragged you to Nancy?
Personal favorite since early childhood. I can't remember specifically, but I suspect it's how I really learned to read. It just was easy on the eye and simple, and just my earliest memories are reading the comic strip and then the comic books. So I fall back on that. It's an instinctive allure. There's plenty of intellectual reasoning that you can summon up, but for me, it's just beautiful to look at. To me, Bushmiller was a master of cartoon geometry. His characters were just perfectly drawn, perfectly proportioned. He didn't cheat. I've seen so many of his originals, and none of them are Xeroxes or photostats. He drew every single panel, every stipple on Nancy's head. So there's a craftsmanship there that I think is comparable to none.
And how many dots on her head? How many? It's something like 67, 69.
It varies,
number.
but if you want to get deep into the weeds, no, it's There's a code, I think.
I've always heard that it's 69. That there are specifically 69 spikes for some reason on her head. Though I can't say I've ever counted them myself. So.
I think they said in the 3 Rocks books it was 69, between 69 and 107, but mostly 69.
Yeah.
Yep. There's been a 3 Rocks was Bill Griffith's cartoon biography of Nancy, as Karl references it, and Jonathan shows our audible audience. How about you, Caitlin? Because Caitlin's been on the show before. Caitlin gets excited about comics like very few others, and I've never seen you more excited than I saw you when you announced Nancy Fest at CXC last year. So what about Nancy just grabs you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of the same idea of what Denis was speaking to. Like, I think of Bushmiller as like an engineer of the comics page, where everything is so precise, and he, was able to master that way of making things look so simple that are actually so, it's in a deceptive way because they're so incredibly complex, and it takes so much effort and intention to actually make it all play out the way it does. I always love how like every single thing in Nancy, whether it's like a hot dog or an ice cream cone or a cat or any kind of object that there is in Nancy, looks exactly like what the definition of that object should be. Like everything is iconic, in its own way. And yeah, as Denis said, it's just inviting and beautiful to look at. And so I've been, a big fan for a really long time. And then on a personal level, when I decided to sort of dedicate my life to working in comics without any sense yet of where that might lead me, I decided to get my first and only tattoo, which is a Nancy tattoo, as a sort of my way of like branding myself with my dedication to comics. And to me, there was no more iconic symbol for comics than Nancy's face. So.
Do you remember how many spikes they put on the tattoo?
You know what? This tattoo, it's on my ankle, and it was so poorly done at this cheap place in New Hampshire, Bob. It was when I was still working at Center for Cartoon Studies. I think I paid $10 for this tattoo. And
oh my God.
the spikes are at this point entirely undecipherable. So it's just kind of a blob. So.
But you can still tell it's Nancy.
Yes, vaguely. Yes.
How about the regulars? I've talked all sorts of comic cartoon strips with you guys over the last year. What separates Nancy from other stuff we've looked at?
Well, I was reading it in newspapers probably in the early 70s, at least, if not earlier. I was born in 64, and my brothers were really big into comics, so I was aware of everything. We had a great newspaper where I grew up, so it was in the paper, and I always laughed at it as much as I was laughing with it, because it seems so basic and it seems so easy, but there's so much work poured in by the artist that it's easy to receive, but it is hard to create, if you know what I mean. It's you get it instantly. Some of the jokes for me as a kid seemed very basic, but they are so perfectly structured and so clean. You don't maybe recognize the effort behind the scenes to make it possible. It's just great.
That was one of the fascinating things that I learned, is that he works backwards. that like he figured out his punchline, and then it was like, okay, how do we get there? I just thought that was brilliant.
A lot of people say endings are hard, but that guy started there, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, I again grew up reading Nancy, and when I was a teenager in my 20s and stuff like that, and I was working in a comic shop in Philly, wanting to be a cartoonist and all that, I really didn't at the time, because like I was really into the indie comic scene. I really didn't give Nancy the time of day at the time. And it was the other people who were older than me that was also working at the comic shop that basically brought me around to looking at Nancy in different It's like she's in a comic. Like the one thing that comes to mind is the way they use they step outside and remind you it's a comic. Like the one panel comes to mind is when Nancy is in a little go-kart and wants Sluggo to push her, and he doesn't want to, so he steps out of the frame and lifts up the frame so she goes down the hill. Stuff like that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, Karl and I are contemporaries, I would say. And so when I was a kid, I think Bushmiller is maybe already passed. So Nancy for me has almost been like a new thing this year, right? Because I was, texting back and forth with Denis Kitchen, and I wound up getting, this Nancy Eats Food book that he had published many years ago, and then Bill Griffith came out with his Three Rocks book. So all of a sudden, I was reading all these things, and I didn't realize, how much the comic plays with the form. Like, Karl just mentioned, like a couple of times I was like, oh, what came first? Did Duck Amuck, Chuck Jones's Duck Amuck come first with some things, or did the comic strip come first? It was not just the straightforward, panel gag. It was more elevated than that. And just one cool fun fact, reading Three Rocks, talks about how he lived in the Bronx a couple of times, and his address was on Valentine Avenue. And coincidentally, I was born a block away from where he lived on Valentine Avenue in the Bronx. So I thought that was a lot of fun. So Nancy's been a lot of fun for me. And my kid has devoured that Three Rocks book multiple times. It's very interesting that my 8-year-old is interested in reading the strips and the biography. It's a lot of fun that we're sharing it together.
Yeah, I too pretty much have read it all my life and not thought about it, right? Which, given the title of this podcast, Wallace Wood's quote, it takes longer to decide not to read Nancy as it takes to read it, right? But it was so simple. I never even really contemplated it until, the How to Read Nancy book came out, and then Three Rocks got me really thinking about it. And then when you start thinking about it and looking at it, that simplicity, it's very difficult to pare everything down to the essentials like that. And that's what I love about it. It's just so simple. And when Denis said that, he never used stencils or copied, that's just magnificent craftsmanship, because so many of his figures are just iconic. And how did he keep it so the same over those years?
And I think that was something, I can't remember if this is addressed in Three Rocks or not, that the people like Plastino who took over for him kind of talked about, where they're like, it looks so simple and yet it was impossible to actually get accurate, just her face alone. Like, for some reason the proportions were just like, there's some alchemy to when Bushmiller does it that no one else can really nail, no matter how hard they try to mimic it. I also want to say that it's just joyful. I know there's a lot of talk about joy recently on the news, but it really, it's just joyful. And obviously, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but there's such a focus on very serious comics nowadays, and comics being serious literature that tackles very serious topics all the time. And that's great. But I also think let's make sure there's still room for stuff like Nancy, where it can just be about joy and fun and simple beauty.
But you know what? It's not dumb either.
No.
So it's not that it completely it might avoid the specifics of the topics, but Denis's book is separated by money, food, etc. And it deals with real stuff. It deals with part of the reason why it's funny is there is a reality to it. But yeah, no, I came to Nancy late. I'm certain that she was in newspapers that I glossed over, though it probably wasn't Bushmiller by the time I was reading. I had a friend who was huge into the Olivia James when she started up, and I read the first volume and went, okay, I like this. Okay. I not quite seeing what he's seeing. And, How to Read Nancy had been on my radar forever, but I didn't start reading it until I started prepping for this. And like that's something that's worth pointing out. Paul Karasik and Mark Newgarden wrote a like scholarly text on one Nancy strip.
Yeah, I used to think it was simple till I read their book.
One Nancy strip. And you know, having that in the back of my head, that made me that much more surprised when I just, you know, Dennis's the collection that Denis put together came out, and I started reading it, and I just laughed and laughed and laughed. It seemed like I was laughing out loud once every 2 or 3 pages, and I'm not someone who laughs out loud at comics that often. I'm pretty good at laughing in my head and not having, you know, the kids or people around me go, "What is that weird guy doing?" But Nancy just she's got an easy sense of humor, a literalness to her. As somebody on the autism or neurodivergent spectrum and working in autism, I tend to see it in all those places before there were actual diagnoses, and she's got that literalness that I see in a lot of the students that I teach. Make me kind of wonder, you know, some of Ernie's habits make me go, he feels like a spectrum type of guy too. You know, and it's just one of those reminders that like the world hasn't changed as much as we understand it. And Nancy is like this great capsule of wonder and beauty of childhood and differences and samenesses. And yeah, I don't even know how to put it, which is why I went last, because I didn't want to babble and then have everybody else say their good stuff. Yeah, no, I mean, we've got plenty of time. This is the opening salvo. I don't even have good questions though, because all I did was laugh.
Yeah.
Um,
Somebody mentioned the strip is accused of being dumb a lot. The writer Roy Blount Jr. years ago in Spy magazine, remember that?
Yeah.
Yep.
He wrote a piece about Nancy, and he said, yes, people accuse it of being dumb, but he said, to me, it's not dumb, it's sublime.
Yeah.
And ever since he used that word, I've kind of stuck with it. Because yeah, superficially anybody can look at it and walk away saying it's dumb, but that's obviously a superficial look.
I mean, I opened to a random page because I want an example of why it's not dumb. And we start with, and I have cats, so I appreciate this so much. You know, she's sitting at her dinner and saying, "Kitty, eat your dinner." And then she gets down to show him. And while she gets down to show him, he jumps up to eat her dinner, because that was the plan all along. That's not dumb. That's somebody who knows cats, you know? And then at the bottom of that same page, you've got the joke on, "There's a hair in my alphabet soup." That's the letters that she left for her aunt. Buy something for the one you love. She runs and buys herself an ice cream sundae.
I read that one today. I was like, yeah, I want to buy something for the person I love. Me.
Right. I'll treat
classic.
myself to a nice lunch today. Everything from soup to nuts, 50 cents. She gets served soup and nut. This is like a recurring gag I noticed with this guy, where he puts out these great signs and then the sale is quite literal. It's like, no. What I advertised was correct. That's not dumb. That's observational. That's not what Nancy doesn't do is a lot of subtext. Here's another great one, you know, whining over a piece of cake so loud that the entire neighborhood is coming to her with a piece of cake. And Fritz won't let her cut into the cake because it's for something later. I made it for a party, but she's loud enough that you have the entire neighborhood.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, for the parents among us, how often is that you're at the store and like your child's whining over something and you're saying no, and and there's a reason that you're saying no, and that's why you have to hold to it. But you can see the people standing around you going, it's only a piece of candy, give them the piece of candy, or whatever. And then the flip side, you're at the store and you're seeing that and you find yourself going, oh, come on. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, I have no idea if that kid needs to have this lesson taught or not taught. And just the dichotomy between how it is for the kid, it's that immediate, but I want the cake now. And for the adults, it's like, I want the silence now.
Caitlin, I'm curious, how is your exhibit sectioned off? Like, what can you tell us a little bit more about that? And I'm excited to go see it when I come to CXC next month.
You'll be at CXC.
Oh, yeah.
Karl, are you there this year?
I am indeed there.
All right.
Awesome.
So at least I have two friends. Sean, you want to
I'm
go?
excited for you guys to see it.
I hope to get there towards the end of October. My play will be running.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You'll still for everybody in Chicagoland between now and the end of October, Fridays through Sundays, House of Ideas, a study of Jack Kirby and Stan Lee is playing at the City Lit Theater. Sean Harklerode is playing Harmon Infantino. And he and the cast and Mark Pratt, the author, will be on 22 panels in a couple of weeks. So, little plug there.
Thanks.
Very cool. Well, let me know if
That's
you do
cool.
end up in Columbus to check it out. I'd love to say hi.
Great.
But yeah, to answer your question, Jonathan, so the rotating, gallery exhibit spaces is one very large gallery and one slightly smaller one. And the larger gallery is all Bushmiller. And the way that Brian Walker, who curated the show, decided to arrange it was really by theme. So there's themes that are actually broken out in that Nancy Show catalog that you can get. Themes like, misbehaving and animals and surrealism and stuff like that. Like kind of all the main, like really wonderful tropes that Bushmiller returns to again and again. So that makes up the majority of that gallery, plus a lot of ephemera, merchandise. The exhibit itself was comprised mostly of loans. So we have a decent amount of Bushmiller work at the Billy Ireland, but there are some private collectors like Denis, for example, like Tom Gamble, who have unbelievable stuff that they were willing to let us borrow for the show. Mark Newgarden, who was one of the other lenders, actually owns Bushmiller's drawing board and T-Square. And so we borrow that from him, and that's in the show. And then the other gallery is sort of the end beyond part of the title, where we're showing how Bushmiller's legacy kind of has been continued by not only the artists who continued the strip after him, and we have samples of all their work too, but also the ways in which it's been interpreted in different spaces. So from, the Mad Magazine parodies and
Warhol.
There's the Warhol piece that we have a nice print of, and the Joe Brainerd piece. Patrick McDonald, the creator of Mutz, did a series of really amazing abstract paintings, sort of inspired by Nancy. And then the biggest feature in that room is actually a whole wall of original art from Three Rocks by Bill Griffith. So
that's cool.
Yeah, so we didn't, a lot of our exhibits, since we're part of OSU, we typically normally we take sort of a more academic approach and get really analytical about whatever we're showing and write labels that are way too long. Whereas this one is really much more straightforward and keeping with the simplicity of it all.
Your theater department also put on a play for Nancy Fest?
It was not the theater department. It was me and Tom Gamble. So, Denis got to see it.
And it was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And
We
is
were
that
really proud of that.
Is that
So
going to be further available in any way, shape, or form?
nope, that was one of
It
those
was a
you had to be
one-time
there,
thing?
which I kind of like. I mean, it's crazy because we literally rehearsed for like 7 months for it to
So
never
you're not
happen
even gonna,
again.
publish
but
the script or anything.
I don't, that would be up to Tom. So Tom wrote
Yeah.
the script, and it was videoed. Like Brian Walker's son is making a documentary about Nancy fandom
Okay.
right now, and filmed a lot of stuff at Nancy Fest, including the entirety of the play. And so it's really going to be up to Tom if he wants to make it available in some way or another. But
right.
I kind of like it. as a thing that like you just had to be there for. So
Yeah, but I had to work.
sorry. I mean, you know what? Make some sacrifices here. It's Nancy we're talking about.
I wanted
Where are
to
your
come
priorities?
to CXC.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's great it's tape because you have to see it more than once. I think the wordplay and the puns were just, 5 a minute, and
Yeah.
you just couldn't catch them all. It really, I think, requires multiple viewings.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, Tom, for those not familiar with Tom Gamble, he's kind of a veteran comedy writer. He's been involved in, every great thing really from the past 40 years, from SNL to Letterman to It's Gary Shandling's show. He wrote the most recent season of Curb Your Enthusiasm. He's just the best. And 22 years on The Simpsons, and is also one of the largest private collectors of Ernie Bushmiller's original art. So he had loaned us a bunch of his work for the exhibit. And then he decided to, write this play to have it debut at Nancy Fest. And as Denis said, it is really sharp, really quick, and punchy, and delivers just like a Nancy strip does. And the premise of it is really about a day in the life of Ernie Bushmiller. And I think part of what's really fascinating about Bushmiller is just how humble he was. And among his quotes are like, I never did anything interesting. Like he just viewed himself as, I don't know, I think sort of the he just of the gag, and was a really fascinating, lovely man. And it was cool to be part of something that was really like honoring his life.
Is that a truly sincere quote? Like that, he was this way. He was a humble kind of a guy.
He called himself the Lawrence Welk of cartoonists.
Yeah.
Wow. So inventive.
Right.
Way more than tiny bubbles.
I love that, he was a very clever guy, but early on the syndicate instructed him, dumb it down, Ernie, dumb it down. And so the syndicate believed, the audience obviously ranged from, first graders to grandmas. And if you dumb it down, you're going to reach the widest audience. So imagine having a job where you're instructed to not be too clever. And yet at the same time, he was clever in the guise of being dumb.
Yeah, no.
But he was also, yes, and I totally agree. I think, in addition to him being this, humble guy, he was also like kind of I think somewhat hard talking Bronx boy ultimately, and his voice really comes through in some of the like very few clips that exist of him, but also in letters of his that have survived and in various collections. And if you guys are interested, I just pulled one up that I had taken a photo of on my phone that I can read to you to give you a sense of his attitude and sense of humor. So this is a letter that he wrote to Milton Caniff. I don't entirely understand what they were talking about, but it's basically Caniff passed along to him a fan letter written for Ernie. So Ernie says, Dear Milt, I just received that little fan letter from Mr. C. Connors of Brooklyn. I've asked Cousin Connors a dozen times to please use a little restraint in his well-meaning efforts to help put Nancy across, but it's no use. Seriously, Milt, I think it was very gracious of you to send it along. Whenever I get a letter like that, I get so goddamn mad, I destroy it on sight. I usually burn it and then eat the ashes, and the following morning flush the bowl twice just to make sure it's out of the way. Frankly, I'm not too happy about winning that drooler away from you. He doesn't sound very bright. Regards, Ernie. So, a sweet, humble man, but also like a, kind of a bruiser. Pretty funny.
Yeah. That sounds Bronx to me.
It's pretty cheeky, I don't think he was a cruel person, but had a good sense of humor. So
no, that's funny.
Yeah. So
wait, are there clips that exist of his voice? I don't think I've ever heard it. Ted, you should edit that into the podcast.
Well, there's not.
We do like editing. We're not that kind of podcast, Jonathan.
You could send it to me. It's my gig.
There's two that I am aware of. One of which was a, what was Dennis, you remember what it was a commercial for? It was like a Army USO thing or something.
But wasn't it Bonds?
It must, okay, War Bonds,
Yeah.
I think. It was a War Bonds commercial. And then another one is a clip from a comic strip documentary from
Yeah, there was like a newsreel from the 1940s where they poked the camera into the face of about a half a dozen cartoonists, including him and El Cap, and I forget who else. I think it's on YouTube. Probably could find it easily.
Mm.
Oh, I could cut that in.
I'm looking at.
I'm glad to hear there's a room. The photos from the exhibit look great. I was trying to absorb as much as I could from the Nancy show or Nancy Fest as I could online because I wasn't there. But the photos look fantastic, and it seemed really amazing in terms of who you were able to get to be in it. I'm really glad to hear that there is a room about Nancy after Bushmiller. I'm not sure how you put it,
Right.
but there's so much. I mean, I said I grew up in the 70s, but then in the 80s, late 80s, people like Art Spiegelman and Charles Burns and Mark Newgarden had been doing like pastiche of Nancy. So like this was just a few years after Bushmiller died, and there was already like, I don't know if there was a reassessment, but it seemed like he was getting his due from sort of the alternative comic scene of that era. And of course, Denis, you were publishing those books in the late 80s, is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So by the time I was in college, it was like, oh, Nancy, this is smart now. What I couldn't quite, capture when I was a kid, even I enjoyed it, I certainly was looking at it in a different way. And in the mid 90s, a lot of artists were asked to audition to do Nancy after Jerry Scott was leaving the strip. So I was one of the people who auditioned to do Nancy in the mid 90s.
Wow.
I only got a week in. I realized there was no way I could maintain that style. I'm assuming there's some Brunetti in the show because he did what, 6 weeks?
I remember.
8 weeks?
Didn't Art Spiegelman give you some advice about Nancy? He said you only need two things: a bottle of wine and a pistol to blow your brains out.
Yes.
Oh my
I did say that.
gosh.
I did say that. Yeah, I could keep them both in my drawer at my desk. Yes, he did say that. Did I tell you that story, or did someone else tell you that story?
Yeah, I think when.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think that was specific to Bushmiller. I think that was just the daily grind. In any case,
okay.
Right.
I had too much reverence for Nancy to assume I could maintain that world on a daily basis. So I realized quickly that wasn't for me. I showed them the week I did, but I didn't go beyond that. But of course, Ivan did, and it's fascinating to see like the world through his viewpoint. And then now, I mean, obviously, Olivia James figured out a way to sort of take the kernel of the original strip and then expand it in her own way, which I thought was brilliant because she was able to sort of find a balance between like a new aesthetic, but also something that went back to the past. I mean, I don't know who Olivia is, but you can definitely see another intelligence behind that strip, and somehow she's balanced like this reverence for the past, but also brought her own aesthetic to it, which I think is great. And then finally, just to mention, she's on sabbatical now, so all these indie cartoonists are doing it. Caroline Cash is doing it this week, the week we're taping, and it kind of warms my heart to see these younger artists also doing their own iterations and their own paying their respect to this strip that's been gone so long now. Anyway, I love sort of seeing everyone's take on the strip, but to sort of see like the kernel that's there in all of them, the sort of the pure joy, as you're saying, like that comes through whoever's drawing it.
I agree.
Is she only getting a week?
I can't remember how long she's getting. It's divided up between a handful of different cartoonists. So, but they are all like, yeah, really young, like indie cartoonists that got selected to do this. And we do have, of course, we've got Brunetti's like tryout strips in the show. And we also have a big section for Olivia as well, though everything she makes is born digital. So it's an iPad where you can swipe through her 50 favorites of the strips that she's done. And I mean, I think it's really, I mean, I know it obviously in the, among the Bushmiller heads, it's been real controversial, Olivia's take on modernizing the strip. But I think it's incredible that even, I think you said, Jonathan, that like you sort of got interested in Nancy because of the new one. Like it's been a gateway for people to get into the old stuff, which I think is great. And like no matter what you think of it, of her take on it, that alone is worthwhile. And it's interesting to me. I don't know among a lot of much younger folks if it has something to do with like kitsch. Like it's just like a kitsch thing. It's really there's something nostalgic and that's what they are attracted to about it. But whatever it is, if it's getting more Bushmiller time, that's great. So.
Yeah, and it's eons above the Gilchrist era.
Yes.
It was.
Was that the 80s stuff?
No, that was the most
remember
recent
what year
one.
he took over. It's
Okay, no,
the one who was forced out shortly before Olivia took over.
Yeah, because
he took over after Brunetti. He took over at the same time Brunetti tried out. So that would have been 94, 95.
Right. He got the job after Jerry Scott stopped, and he is the one that sort of made it religious and also Southern. Like it was a lot of country music influences and stuff.
And he really tarted up Fritzy Ritz.
Yeah.
In fact, didn't he have her get married, as I recall? And it just, it was awful.
Right.
Because I think I was a bit shocked when I saw, I guess it was the Jerry Scott stuff from the 80s on how different it was than Bushmiller. It's a bit of a shock looking at it. And I think I only saw that in the show book.
He already had a strip called Baby Blues, I think. And so he drew it in his style. He made no attempt to, carry on a Bushmiller style. Which again, as we discussed earlier, it's not easy to mimic. Olivia shows just enough reverence toward it, I think. She shows an homage, and at the same time, it's her own strip. And I think if you're going to catch a contemporary audience, it's probably smart. She has Nancy and Sluggle with cell phones and things that, to purists may be annoying, but I think it's the only smart way to survive when newspapers are dying and you need every trick.
Oh, and actually, one thing I think is really important to bring up when we're talking about like who's doing the strip now is that Bushmiller introduced Nancy in a strip he took over from someone else. So Fritzy Ritz is another artist character. It was a strip in the 20s. Bushmiller took it over and then made it his own. So if you have to sort of understand the way that newspaper strips work. There's always somebody new changing the strip. I'm sure people at Fritzy Ritz were really annoyed when Nancy showed up because it wasn't the Fritzy Fritz they loved.
Yeah,
so it's the cycle of it's whatever that syndicate bulldozer is that just must have more content. Bulldozer? Anyway, must have more content.
And it's always funny to me, like when you realize how many of those things that became, Nancy became this, icon, just came from some like editorial suggestion, like I think she was in one strip and they were like, oh, she's good. Let's keep her. Like there was no intention behind it from him of like, okay, I'm going to roll out this whole new thing. And it makes me think about how like Gasoline Alley was literally just a strip originally about guys, mechanics working in a garage.
Right.
And it was suggested to them that they add a baby into the strip to, expand readership. And then, look what happened from there. So I just think it's a really interesting thing that seems specific to comics and, the world of syndicated comics. So.
Well, and Fritzy Ritz was a continuity strip, right? Had stories going on, and Bushmiller kept that up for several years, right? And there were some great, storylines. I love when Nancy would go and be babysat by the neighbors.
Right.
Those were just hilarious.
The really grumpy guy.
Yeah, I can't remember his name, but he's great.
But at some point, I guess in the 40s, did it become a gag strip? I don't know when the change happened.
There is where I picked.
Or do you mean like when did it change its name, or
To kind of a gag a day?
Daily gag, yeah. Yeah, she used to have, I mean, even adventures that would just last 1 week, but there would be a Monday to Saturday continuity.
right?
Yeah, I guess somebody should figure out when he stopped doing that and just went for the daily gag. We should know.
Yeah, it's a good point. I don't actually.
I mean, I counted on you guys to be the experts on things like that. I didn't even know to ask the question.
It was sometime after they went to England. Those were some great strips.
Right.
As we're running up on time, I wanted one last question for Caitlin because, kind of Caitlin and Denis, because I knew he was there. You guys always celebrate the opening of a new exhibit, but this time you did a whole festival.
Right.
Talk to me about Nancy Fest. Talk to me about what made you decide to do Nancy Fest, because I know you were behind a lot of that, weren't you? Was that
Yes,
your
possibly all of it. I'll
Okay.
say.
So yeah. Talk to
I'm
me
definitely the resident Nancy head at the Billy Ireland, and everyone else was just like, okay, if this is what you want to do.
About what inspired. I mean, Billy Ireland goes all out on all sorts of things, but I mean, the reason that I seriously looked at trying to get out to Nancy Fest, even though it was going to be ridiculously hard, was because just the idea that you would go that all out on a semi-random weekend at the beginning of the summer for a comic strip that those of us who have finally actually sat down with it love. I mean, I think it's hard not to sit down with Nancy and wind up loving her, but it's not like most people's go-to, you got to go read Nancy. I think it's becoming that, but I've been around comics people a lot, and it's only been the last couple of years that I've had a lot of people suddenly going, "Oh, have you checked out Ernie Bushmiller?"
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah.
So we we knew we wanted to do something big. Usually, as you said, we just have some kind of reception and maybe a speaker, like a one night thing, a nice little soiree. But part of it was that Tom had started writing this play, and he had been doing that before the show, well before the show was getting set up. And so we knew, okay, we have this play we want to debut somewhere at some point during Nancy Fest. And then the more people that got involved with the show, like Denis and Mark and Patrick McDonnell and all the other lenders, the more we started thinking about how, there is this sort of cult around Nancy that the Ernie Bushmiller, the secret Ernie Bushmiller Society is at the helm of. And it just seemed like we should probably get all those folks together to do something. And I have to say, when we decided to make it like an official 1.5 day, 2-day type event and put it out there, I thought for sure, okay, maybe like 100 people are going to come to this, and I'm going to know probably all of them, or have some idea of who they all are. They're going to be like, comics people, And what blew me away and blew us all away was not only was it the first event we've ever charged for, ever, because everything we do is typically for free, but this was such a big thing, bringing in so many guests that we needed to recoup some funds, so we charged for it, and it sold out like almost immediately to 350 people. And I didn't know most of them. And we, I remember on we announced it. We said save the date.
I couldn't have gone anyway, because by the time I was thinking about trying to find time, if it sold out immediately, I would have shown up, and you would have been like, sorry, I can't let you in.
There was
you could have had standing room only,
Right. There was a big waiting list, and we, added people as we could from the, up until the last minute. But it was really cool because I remember getting a phone call like a day or two after we announced to save the date for when the registration was going to be open. So it was just a save the date thing. This guy called me from Missouri and he's like, "Hey, so I'm looking for more information about Nancy Fest. I'm planning to fly my family of 10 out. My parents are big fans and I've gotten my kids really into it." This guy, again, has no connection to the comics community as far as, being more than just a reader. And he and his whole family came out, and, people came from all over the country for it, and the enthusiasm was really incredible. It was one of the best experiences of my life. I'm not gonna lie. It was like, I know that maybe that sounds lame, but it was just so
no, it sounds
joyful.
amazing.
It was
so
so
I
fun.
gotta
And
ask,
yeah,
is it gonna spawn like annual? Might be too often, but like
no, it'll
the
never happen
every
again.
5-year Nancy Fest.
No, I don't think so. For a couple of reasons. One, like it has to be tied to the exhibit. Like it would be odd to just do another random Nancy Fest for no reason. Two, the play is never going to happen again. And three, like, we're, as soon as the Nancy show closes, we're on to other comics and cartoonist themed shows. But
Right.
it has made us wonder if down the line, for example, looking at Sean's background, we may at some point do, we have the Chester Gould collection. We may do a Dick Tracy show. Will we do some sort of Dick Tracy Fest or something? So it seems like there's interest in celebrating specific old comic strips and doing it in that kind of like multi-day fashion. Especially if there's a costume contest involved, because there was one for Nancy Fest and it was pretty impressive what people did. So
Yeah, the guy who won was a dead ringer for Sluggo.
he was amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wish I'd managed to fit it in.
Oh,
I'm
Ted,
glad
are
that
you
it went
muted?
off. I moved my microphone again. Can you hear me?
Oh.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I wish I'd been able to fit it in. I'm glad it went off so well. Yeah, the comic strip book club has been an interesting one for me because it's wound up being so much about form, so much about the daily grind, etc. There's been lots of things that we liked, but this one kind of stood out, except for the Lost Peanuts episode, which we're gonna try again in October, as one where we just like enjoyed it. It was just fun. It was just, it's the one I've been meaning to put together a Go Comics subscription since like the beginning of this, because Bob and Sean are like, get your morning comics in your email. And Nancy's the one that pushed me over the edge. It's like, yeah, no, I want my Nancy daily. So yeah.
And of course, Go Comics also has the Nancy archive.
Yep.
So you can get Bushmiller, a daily Bushmiller and a daily Olivia or whoever's filling in this week.
Right. And many other amazing comics, both new and old. So we're gonna go around the table. We're gonna finish with Denis and Caitlin this time. I'm just gonna go in the order that my screen is. So Jonathan, you get to go first. Last Nancy thing.
So you guys were just talking about getting it daily, but I have to say I am so super crazy happy to be reading these collections. Like I was just whatever, people can't see it, but Denis, I got one of Denis's Nancy Eats Food, and Nancy Eats Food is one of the 3 volumes that's in Nancy and Sluggo's Guide to Life. And that's New York Review of Comics at that publisher. And then New Garden, right? The Fantagraphics, they just reprinted it. So now I'm just all crazy about going all in on all Nancy. But yeah, one a day is great, but to read the volume of it as someone who makes comics, it's not only do you laugh and is it joy, but it is also a lesson in I think in how to write and how to create, and using a certain perspective that you wouldn't always use when looking at other comics.
Sean.
I think the sirens are done. I think the thing that I wanted to point out And it goes also back to How to Read Nancy. There's a page where they show a printed page from somewhere in, I think Georgia it was, and it's a crowded comics page. But due to the uncrowded nature of Bushmiller's scene, your eye is automatically drawn to Nancy because everything else is so filled in and it's some white space. And I just thought that was just brilliant.
Karl.
Two things I was going to say was, I really liked in the Three Rocks book where he compares the way Bushmiller sets up a panel to Edward Hopper and the simplicity of it. I really like that. And the other thing I wanted to kind of point out is, like, you know, we're all cartoonists talking to other cartoonists, but the one thing about Nancy is Nancy's up there with maybe Mickey Mouse and Charlie Brown that normal people know who this is. She is so iconic that when you mention Nancy, almost everyone knows who it is.
Bob.
I think where do I begin? I'll say one thing. We were talking earlier about it being the daily strip, and you kind of have to respond to the like the editorial direction, or you just have to sort of fill the daily grind every day. You just have to just create another strip. One thing that is really fascinating about Nancy is sometimes there are references to contemporary culture. There's oblique references to that shark movie in the 70s, and they're talking about Jaws, but he's never very specific about things. I think Khrushchev shows up a couple of times in the 60s. Once in a while, a famous person will show up or be referenced, but for the most part, the strip at its best is completely timeless, and there's very little in it other than maybe the style of phones. There's very little in it that won't hold up for a contemporary reader because it's so pure. As Caitlin was saying earlier, every object is kind of like the quintessential version of that object, and it always feels like it was written today.
I'm going to say it just makes me laugh and give it to Caitlin.
I'll say that people should come see the Nancy show. One of the really fun surprises in it is that there was a Nancy and Sluggo costume worn in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade for many years, a couple different versions of it, and we have one of them that actually had turned up on Facebook Marketplace
Oh my God.
from a woman in New Jersey, and I went and picked it up from her, and it's on display. You can take pictures of it in the middle of the Bushmiller and Beyond gallery, and it was, I believe, worn in the 83 and 84 Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parades. We've the videos of it from the parade are on YouTube, and they prove that there is a Sluggo costume somewhere out there. So keep your eyes peeled for the Sluggo mascot costume.
Right.
All right, Denis.
I want to say, with regard to Nancy Fest, I knew there was a cult, but what was great was actually seeing nearly 400 people who were living faces to a good portion of that cult. The other thing is when Jonathan held up the Nancy Eats Food book, the one from that series that I find myself going back to again and again that is so much fun is the one Bums, Beatniks, and Hippies. Because when Bushmiller drew all of them in different eras, they're somewhat indistinguishable because they all have unruly hair, and they all have patches on their clothes, and they're all, you can tell, people that Ernie disapproves of, and yet they're still done in a charming and lovable way. I remember at the same time he was lampooning hippies, Al Cap was eviscerating hippies in Little Abner, and it was mean-spirited, and it didn't have an iota of charm to it. So even Ernie, who was a self-described square, when he drew my people and and Bums and Beatniks, you could tell he didn't hate us. he just didn't understand us. And I think that's a core part of the guy had heart, you know.
Beautiful.
Nancy Fest is
So this was fun. Thank you, Tad, for pulling it together.
Absolutely. Nancy Fest is running through November, and the book that goes along with it is
The Nancy Show from Fantagraphics and Sunday Press.
and that's not Nancy Fest. The Nancy Show exhibit at Billy Ireland is going through November. Pick up Denis's Nancy and Sluggo's Guide to Life, comics about food, money, and other essentials. New York Review of Books at finer comic shops. Sean is in House of Ideas at the City Theater in Chicago. Anybody else have anything coming out in the near future that we should talk about quickly? No?
So Buttons number 14 that I'll be bringing to CXC. Karl, Cristian Krumpholz is in it, as well as Columbus local Craig Campbell.
Cool.
The new issue of In the City is coming out, part 3 of 5. The new issue will debut at SPX, and also I'll be at CXC 2 weeks later.
Cool.
See you guys there.
All right.
Yeah.
For the wonderful group of people we have here, this has been 22 Panels, and we will see you after the next page.
Hey guys, this is Tyler from 22 Panels. I'm here to tell you all about our Patreon. If you enjoy this show, please consider donating to our Patreon to keep this show going. We have many different tiers, all different levels to help you decide what's right for you. Okay, so get on out there to patreon.com/22 Panels Podcast.